Anyone who followed the recent Tamil Nadu election would have noticed that one of the central campaign plans of Vijay was corruption or anti corruption, if you like. It found a mention in pretty much most, if not all, his campaign speeches. And even after he came to power and became chief minister, this messaging about corruption continues. And over the last few weeks, there have been a flurry of moves to suggest that his administration is serious about damping down on corruption, particularly the sort of petty, cutting edge kind uh, that exists, or in most states in this country. Now, some of the moves that he's actually made in this direction are worth mentioning very briefly. I mean, there have been some changes in the processes by which tenders are issued and so on in certain departments, um, such as the electricity department and the land registration department. Uh, the Minister for School Education, for instance, has issued statements to the effect that private schools, which are required by law to have certificates of recognition from the state government, will get them, through the sort of legal process, and that no longer be withheld, and there'll no longer be any um illegitimate demands made on private schools, which was definitely a problem that some schools faced during the last administration. All this is all very good, but if you've been a journalist as long as I was, you can't help being a little cynical about whether all this will sustain. I mean, we've seen, for instance, Rajiv Gandhi in 1984. The press painted him as Mr. Clean, someone who was going to sweep the corridors of power, sweep corruption out of the corridors of power, if you like, um, and came in with a whole lot of promise as a sort of uncorrupted outsider. And then very soon this began to unravel with Bofors and some other things. And the decline happened very shortly after his victory. Kejriwal, I think, has suffered a similar fate. Uh, Won two stunning victories in Delhi, but after 2022, allegations of corruption and his own image, I think, took a beating because of the kind of money he spent on his official residence, which sort of, seemed at odds with the image that he had calculated of being a simple and sort of man who eschewed luxuries and so on. Um, there are other examples of people who've won and lost battles on the ground of corruption. Jayalalitha in 1996 is a good example. She was swept out of power because of what was perceived to be excessive corruption in her regime. So we've seen this, and I think anti-incumbency, in a way, also reflects, I think, this sort of despair about that people have that the governments you elect are pretty much the same in this respect. Now, coming back to Vijay, the question is, while the recent set of moves are very welcome, and the intent and the promise is something you cannot you know have object to. The question is whether it'll sustain. I mean, in India, we've seen time and again that the system kind of kicks in, it co-opts and assimilates you, and uh, politicians who signal that they're different and want to make a difference are just sucked into the system, and after a while they're no different from each other, at least on this front. And I think, although There are many challenges that Vijay faces. Inexperienced ministers, for instance, a state that is reeling under debt, uh, the, the political expectations that he might run a much, much cleaner government is going to be one of the big challenges that he will face. Not everyone in his ministry is lily white. Um, there are people who have joined the TVK from other parties. So this is something that is going to be, at, at the very least, very, very difficult to manage going forward. What interested me about the Tamil Nadu election, when speaking of corruption as an issue, is how the media uh, paid so little attention to this issue, even in the run up to the election, and even, for instance, during the election. So let's take during the election, for instance, because I found this very glaring. Now, one of the things that has been happening in Tamil Nadu, and not that many people outside the state may be aware of this, is that there is a sort of systematic, or has been a systematic effort to target voters by giving them wads of cash. This is extensive. It happens pretty much all over the state. And in this election, both the major players outside the TVK had done this extensively. Now, this is not terribly hard to establish. It happens. People are willing to talk about it. All you need to do is to go to a village and just ask, and you'll get a fair idea of which party paid what to how many. But this got very little play in the media. Vijay's TVK happened to be the only party that actually didn't pay. People took money from the other formations and voted for Vijay. But even so, the issue is, for me, is that why does petty and cutting edge corruption, despite being an important electoral issue, why doesn't it get the kind of play it deserves? And I think there are many reasons for that, and I'll just mention a couple. One is, I think the media has focused in recent times. There's been an increasing focus on big ticket corruption, on crony capitalism, the kind of nexus you have between government and big industrialists and mega deals and so on. All this is very important. The media should not lose sight of some of the terrible things that have been happening on this count. But this should not come at the cost of losing or your focus on the other kind of corruption, the garden variety kind, if you like. That exists, that is pervasive, and that affects the lives of ordinary citizens as well. And I think Vijay sensed that this was an important political issue that he could draw mileage from, and he did. But it's interesting that the media didn't pay. If the media got it wrong, and the media underestimated Vijay's performance, I think it's partly because they weren't talking about, or they weren't concerned about what the voters felt on this count. And I think the reason for this is this kind of corruption is no longer fashionable with the commentariat, particularly the left and liberal commentariat. I've had liberal friends who say that, corruption is not such a major issue. There are much, much bigger issues at play. I've had friends actually tell me that, corruption actually lubricates the economy. So it's not entirely a bad thing though it may be. There's some good sides to it. But I think the significant thing is that Corruption is bipartisan, it's pervasive, it's universal, uh, it's non ideological. And in this era where ideology is all, it doesn't get the kind of play that issues like caste, uh, identity, region, language, gender, all these issues get. I'm not suggesting it should get more attention than these issues, but I think it must get the attention it deserves. Vijay, of course, is completely aware of this. But as I was saying, it's one thing to win an election on a profits of fighting corruption, and it's quite another thing to see it through once you're elected. Um, it's probably not fair to be cynical all the time. So I think the proper thing to say is to give him a chance. But this is, I think, a space that people are going to watch in the days going ahead. And I think his electoral future could depend very, very critically, apart from his reputation as well, on quite how he handles this issue going forward.